over the past few years, I have gotten my fair share of platinums. Some of them took a lot of time and effort, and others didn't. For me, there are 3 things that determine the value of a platinum: how many hours it takes to complete, the difficulty, and the rarity. PlayStation trophies come in 5 rarities: common, uncommon, rare, very rare, and the rarest of them all, ultra rare. I am sad to say that I only have 1 ultra rare platinum and, well, trophy too, which is really embarrassing. So to finally change that, in this video I will be getting a platinum of every single rarity. And let's just say there's a reason why some trophies are ultra rare, and the game I picked had a whole 17 ultra rare trophies. Let's just get started with... A common trophy has a completion percentage of 50% or more. In this category, you see a lot of short games, really popular games with easy trophy lists, and shovelware. I wanted to play something that wasn't too long, but also not trash. That's when I remembered a small game that I saw on PS Plus a few weeks ago and have been meaning to play, Cat Quest. Cat Quest is an RPG where you play as a cat whose sister got kidnapped. That is basically all I know about the plot, because it is all said through text and I did not feel like reading all of that. The trophy guide says that it takes around 12 hours, and it is a 3 out of 10 difficulty, so I can see why it is a common. There were going to be a few trophies that will be a grind, like reaching level 99, clearing all of the dungeons, completing all of the side quests, and collecting 66 pieces of armor. But most of the trophies seemed easy to get. I got my first trophy pretty early on in the game, and reached level 10 only an hour into the game, so I thought the leveling up part would not take too much time. But as you'll see later, that was not true. At the beginning I was having a lot of fun, the combat mechanics and spells were interesting, and there was more depth to the gameplay than I thought there would be. I was also enjoying all the cat jokes. However, I started getting bored pretty quickly, but I continued playing, earning a trophy for completing 6 side quests. As I was walking from side quest to side quest, trying to level up so that I could continue with the main story, which was basically just killing the dragons, I ran into 2 issues. First, we are a really slow cat in a really big world. Second, the map sucks. It basically just zooms everything out and doesn't let you place waypoints or tell you where the side quests or dungeons you're missing are located. There is a sign above them, but since the map zooms out, they look really small. You also have to be pretty close to them because you can't see the whole map all at once. And there is also no way to track the side quests. The first point had an easy fix. I finished a mission that taught me how to fly, which made the traversal a lot faster. However, there was no fix to the map issue and I had to deal with it throughout the entire playthrough. There are 3 things to do in this game: clear dungeons, do the side quests, in which you will probably have to clear a dungeon, and kill the dragons. This got old very quickly. I was hoping one thing would change, but the further into the game you get, the more repetitive everything gets since you become so overpowered. Even killing the dragons stops being a challenge, and it wasn't much of one to begin with. While the game is relatively short, it felt so long, especially once you have to do the post-game grind. The side quests were easy to do, and the trophy popped way faster than I thought it would. I still had different quests on the map, but I guess those do not count towards a trophy. I still did them because doing side quests is the easiest way to earn XP. Reaching level 50 was easy enough, but you simply can't reach level 99 by 100%ing the map. So I was forced to play through the same dungeon over and over again for hours to finish this final trophy. I did not have the time of my life, but thankfully the game was not only easy but short. I am sad that I did not enjoy the game, because it is part of a trilogy, but who knows, maybe I will give those a shot for another challenge. This was only the first game out of 5 that I have to platinum, and they are going to get progressively harder, longer, or even more tedious than this one was. But I think I made some pretty good choices for the next few games, hopefully. To make things more fun, I will also be placing all 5 games into a tier list to see what rarity was more fun to get. There will be 2 categories: fun and not fun, keeping it simple. Now, Cat Quest was not a fun game, but because of how short it was, I can't say it was the worst game I've ever played. It wasn't fun, but it also wasn't bad. This is very much a personal opinion, and I can see how someone could love this game. It just wasn't for me. Let's move on to... An uncommon trophy has a completion percentage between 50% and 20%. For the uncommon platinum, I decided to play Killer Frequency, a game where you are a radio host turned 911 dispatcher on a night where a serial killer is running loose. I have been wanting to play this game for a long time and finally have a good reason to. The Platinum is a 2 out of 10, taking 10 hours to complete. I picked something easy and short because the next few games were going to be extremely challenging, especially the ultra rare. We're trying to discover who the serial killer is to stop him while also trying to save the victims by making the best choices we can based on the information that is provided. For some cases, we will have very little information, so we basically have to guess, others have complex puzzles to solve, and others are very easy. It was a nice variety of challenges, and I found myself having a lot of fun. The main trophies that I had to look out for were for saving everyone, killing everyone, and saving everyone in under 4 hours. The game starts with a jump scare of the killer inside the radio station, and we hop straight into our booth. We're in here at night because it is a late show with our co-host Peggy, who you can only ever see the shadow of, but she's there in spirit. For the first playthrough, I am trying to earn the trophy for saving everyone. I immediately failed that by letting the first person die, but the cool thing about this game is that you can actually have save files, unlike a game I will be playing later on. So I just reloaded my save file and tried again, this time saving her, which gave me my first trophy. Unfortunately, I completely ignored the speedrun aspect on my first playthrough because I wanted to explore everything, and it made me have to do a whole extra playthrough. But before worrying about that, I continued playing through this first playthrough. I got 2 trophies not related to saving people, one for playing a sound on the soundboard during a call, and another one for not answering a prompt for 30 seconds. I really liked how for the puzzles you sometimes had to go outside your booth to look for different clues around the office that would help you do the correct choices. At some point we find out that the Whistling Man, that's the name of the killer by the way, is actually Clive, our janitor here at the station. So we go down to his storage closet and find this huge wall filled with victims that he's planning to kill. We need to figure out who the next victim is to save them. We then find out that Clive was only trying to help these people and the actual killer was a woman who happened to be Peggy's sister. Oh, and also her son, so there were 2 killers. At some point, Peggy leaves the studio and she ends up being with Dawn, the killer who also had called us multiple times and who is her sister. I know, complicated. Peggy is trying to convince Dawn that she did not forget her. Also, at this point, I am on Peggy's side of the studio with the other killer on my side. Okay, I hope you got all of that. Here is where we help save Peggy and where the game decides if we die or don't. Thankfully, I managed to save her and I also lived, so I got the trophy for saving everyone. I didn't finish the game quickly enough for the speedrun trophy, so again, I was going to have to do another playthrough saving everyone. I really like this game, so that shouldn't have been an issue, but it was. It is only made for one playthrough. Once you know the story and have done your choices, there is not much more to it. The puzzles don't change, and there is not a lot of gameplay outside of them. It was fun to make everyone die because there was at least some change in dialogue and in how things occurred. Some conversations never happen, and Forrest, the guy we play as, is very much a douchebag. Oh, and the killer enters your booth and murders you, which was not something I was expecting. There's a few collectible trophies, but it's like 5 items total, so nothing that you even need a guide for. The rest of the trophies are all either tied to the story or to helping characters survive. So overall, it was a pretty simple trophy list. If it did not have that one speedrun trophy, or if I would have been smarter and did it from the start, this game would have been a lot more fun. This game is on PS Plus, and if you haven't already, I highly recommend you play it, but maybe on a second account, because to be honest, the Platinum is not the most fun ever. Thankfully, it is a pretty short game, so each playthrough can be completed in about 3.5 hours, but again, not a very replayable game. I will say that this game was fun, not the most fun ever, but fun nonetheless. Next up we have... I have never played Hotline Miami before, but it is a pretty loved game with a Metacritic score of 8.5 based on users. On PSN profiles, Hotline Miami is a 5 out of 10, taking 10 hours to complete. But for someone who has never played this type of game before, it was closer to a 7 out of 10 and took double the time. It was so hard, but not even close to being as hard as the ultra rare Platinum I will be getting. Hotline Miami is a top-down action game set in 1989 Miami. The reason why this game is rare and very hard is because you have to get an A+ on every single chapter, which requires you to perfectly execute all the levels. There are other tedious trophies like performing every ground kill, using all of the Trojan weapons, and using all of the melee weapons. But before I worry about that, I had to complete all of the levels for the first time, getting all of the puzzle pieces and masks which give you different abilities, to get used to the controllers and enjoy the story. I quickly got my first trophy for throwing a weapon at an enemy so that his weapon hits another, whatever that means. I also got some of the easier combo trophies like 4 times and 6 time combo, but the 12 time combo took me a lot longer to get. I didn't really pay much attention to the story because it is by far the least interesting thing about this game. I guess there are some underlying themes, but I was too focused on dying to really think about what the game was trying to say. Often with games that don't have cutscenes or spoken dialogue, I have a hard time staying interested in the story, and that was also the case here. The enemies die from one hit, which is awesome, but so do you, which is not as awesome. This game wants you to die. Maybe not as many times as I did, since I unlocked the trophy for dying 1,000 times way too fast. Not only do you die fast, but you can also respawn just as fast. Or, well, you should be able to. There is a glitch in the PS5 version of this game that if you die too many times, which you will, the game freezes for around 10 seconds on the restart screen. Which is not good for games like this, where you are trying to learn how to finish the level through repetition. This was especially frustrating when I was trying to get the A+ ranks on every single level. This game has 20 chapters and a bonus chapter. Once you're done with the first 15, you play as another guy for a few levels. This character has a knife and can't use guns. At least, I couldn't figure out how to. I got my first A+ on a chapter here. Up to this chapter, I was averaging a C, so needless to say, I was going to have to work really hard for these A+. Once I was done with the story, I started to play for the A+ and started getting some of the random trophies, which there are a lot of. Clearing chapter 2 with the Nigel mask was probably the hardest one since it inverts your controller, but thankfully you only need to complete the level and not get an A+, because that would literally be impossible. One thing that I didn't like about some of these trophies, specifically the ones relating to getting kills with stuff like the troubles or melee weapons, was that there were no way of tracking them. So I had to guess which weapons I had not used, which wasn't fun, especially since they spawn at random. But I just loaded up chapter 5 until I got a weapon I didn't remember using, used it, and reloaded the chapter hoping to find all of them. Getting an A+ on every chapter was hell. There were a few chapters that were pretty easy to get, and others not so much. To make this as easy as possible, I alternated between 2 masks. Tony, which lets you one-shot with your fist, and Zack, which lets you keep your combo multiplier going for longer. This helped me immensely on getting all of these A+, and before I knew it, I finished all of the levels. The last trophy I had left before the platinum was, surprisingly, the one for going to the car 60 times. I can definitely see why this game is rare, but I'm honestly surprised it is not a very rare platinum. It was, however, a very fun and addicting experience, so I have to put it on the fun tier. If you don't have this platinum, I highly recommend you play it, but do so on the PS4 version so that you don't have your screen freezing all the time. You'll thank me. Next up we have... Originally, I planned on playing Skate for this difficulty, and I did play around 30 hours of it, until I looked at the trophy guide and realized it would take 100. So I knew I was going to have to save that for another video if I wanted to finish this challenge in my current lifetime. Since the Ultra Rare Platinum was coming up, I didn't want this game to take so long, but I still wanted to do a skateboarding game. That's when I saw Skate Story, a game I knew nothing about other than the fact that it has skate on its name. I looked it up and sure enough, it was a very rare platinum with only 9.7% of players having finished the game. I quickly looked at the trophy guide to see if there were any missables and was surprised to see a very easy game that didn't take long. But as always, there were reasons why it was a very rare game. It requires you to do 10,000 tricks for a trophy. This may not seem like a lot, but the skating wasn't super fun with the tricks being performed by pressing buttons, unlike Skate where you use the joystick. A way more fun mechanic in my opinion. But before worrying about that, I just played through the story. We play as a demon who wants to eat all of the moons, and in order to get there faster, we use a skateboard instead of walking. However, the ice, or whatever, don't like skateboarding, it's considered a sin, but the demon signed a contract with the devil and off we went. This game was beautiful. The music, the atmosphere, and the art style were all amazing. I don't know how I ended up playing 3 games without any spoken dialogue, but this one had by far the most interesting story. At least at the start. We learned the tricks by reading monuments, which gave us souls, the currency in this game, that you can use for buying boards, which had a trophy tied to it that I had to have in mind. You can also find a few free boards per level. These boards can be used to customize your own. I quickly got my first trophy in Chapter 1 for doing a trick over a philosopher. The trophy list was simple: finish all of the chapters, die 500 times, another grindy trophy, the 10,000 tricks, and a few random trophies that are pretty easy to get with the guide. Once I made it to the first moon, they taught us how to do damage. You get a high combo and then stomp down, which causes the number you had as damage. I got a trophy for stomping a combo of 20,000. There was another trophy for stomping a combo of 99,999 or higher, which would hopefully not be too hard. I finished Chapter 1 after eating the first moon and decided that I wanted to eat all 7. There's this skater's dream place where you can go see your stomach, which I thought was pretty cool. After that, whatever entity is talking to us tells us that in our contract it actually said in fine print that we had to do the devil's laundry, so off I went to do that. In here I got a trophy for collecting the 18 skate decks, which was way easier to get than I thought. I was also spamming tricks as I went because I wanted to do everything I could to make the post-game grind as short as I could. Cute effort because it did not work at all. After I finished doing the devil's laundry, I got bored of the story. The skating stopped being fun, the music was getting a little too obnoxious, and I can't show you guys most of the game because you would literally have a seizure. They went a little too hard on the lights. I went into the gift shop and started working towards a trophy for placing 100 stickers. This took forever since you could only buy 20 stickers at a time because there is a glitch that only lets you have 10 copies of every sticker. We have yet another game that can't handle being played on a PS5. This was especially frustrating when I was trying to do 10,000 tricks since I could only play around 10 minutes before the game started lagging, to the point that it was unplayable. Just like Hotline Miami, we were talking 5 to 10 seconds on a frozen screen. I would have been just a little upset if the grind was an hour long, but it took me around 4 hours of just pressing the square button to get this trophy. This is by far the most boring trophy I have gotten in all of my time as a trophy hunter, and it will be very hard to ever top. This game was not fun. It is a fun 2-hour play, and maybe I would have said it was fun if it didn't have the most monotonous trophy in existence that made it feel like I was playing My Name is Mayo for 4 whole hours for only 1 trophy. It took away from the whole experience to have a trophy that is so out of place. The game just does not have enough content to have you perform that many tricks. I would have been fine having this trophy in a game like Skate, where there are different grinds, challenges, and missions. Here, I was literally just skating on the same spot, pressing a button. Very disappointing game for a game that looks so cool. I don't even want to think about this game ever again, so let's just move on. After 4 very interesting games came the time that I have been waiting for, the whole purpose of this challenge, getting an ultra rare platinum. Now, looking through the list, literally nothing caught my eye. That was until I saw a game that I did not think would have an ultra rare platinum, Resident Evil Revelations 2. I took a look at the list and it was a 7 out of 10, taking only 25 hours, which, by the way, was a huge lie. It is more like an 8 out of 10, and it took me 50 hours. The first red flag I should have seen was the fact that a whopping 17 out of the 44 trophies are ultra rare. But seeing that only made me want to play it more, because I would be getting 17 times more ultra rare trophies than I already had. A lot of different things make this game hard, like the invisible game mode, a mode that makes every single enemy in the game invisible. Oh, and also sets the game to the hardest difficulty. But the funny thing is that it wasn't even the hardest part of the platinum. I started with a playthrough on moderate difficulty, playing through the game and enjoying the story like I usually do with Resident Evil games. There is a trophy for completing each of the 4 chapters. In the first half of the episode, you play as Claire Redfield, which immediately made the game more fun for me since Resident Evil 2 is my favorite. And also as Moira, this random kid. You swap between the characters pressing triangle, and there are different things that only Moira can do, and things that only Claire can do. Moira uses a crowbar and a flashlight to stun people, and Claire has a knife and a gun. I got a trophy pretty early on for having Moira stun an enemy and Claire follow up with a physical attack. The whole game can also be played in co-op, which I tried to do, but after seeing the horrendous split screen and my sister hating the game, I started playing it on my own. On the second half of the episodes, you play as Barry, Moira's father, who has the guns, and Natalia, a random little girl, who can literally see the aura of the monsters and throws a brick. For some reasons, the Barry section sucked so bad. Maybe a completely different team designed them, but they were heavy on the puzzles. This feature Natalia has of being able to see enemies was going to be a huge help during the invisible playthroughs. After I cleared all of the episodes, everything started to go downhill. The easy fun part was over. There are 3 things you have to do on every episode after clearing them, episode 1 having 4 things. Countdown mode, a game mode where you have a limited amount of time to finish the episode, invisibility mode, where the enemies are invisible, and getting all of the medals. The absolute worst part of this game and what made it take so long. On top of that, you also have to complete episode 1 only using your knife. But before that, I took a second to finish the raid mode trophies. Raid mode is a completely different thing than the campaign. It is basically like mercenaries mode on RE4 and 7 if you have played that. You have to kill some enemies and progress through a map. Thankfully, the trophies were pretty easy, requiring you to simply play through 6 missions. I know the first Revelations game requires you to play this game mode for countless hours, so at least they were merciful on this one. When I finished raid mode, I hopped straight into countdown mode. You have 3 minutes to finish each chapter, but there are clocks that you can hit to add time. Blue ones give you 1 extra minute, and orange ones restart your time to 3 minutes. Killing enemies also gives you extra time, the amount depending on the type of enemy you killed. Things were going fine until they weren't. After that horrible encounter and doing episodes 1 and 2, I decided to just watch a guide for the last 2 episodes, since let's be honest, I have no idea what I'm doing. This would not slide on invisibility mode, since you rely on knowing where every single enemy is going to spawn. Once I finished the countdown modes, the most logical idea was to get every medal for episode 1, then do invisible mode for this episode, and do this pattern for every single episode. The medals sucked. There are 10 medals for the clear part of the episode and 10 medals for the berry part on every single episode. Some of them were easy. Stunning 20 enemies with Moira's flashlight, hitting enemies with Natalia's brick 15 times, stuff like that. But there was one specific medal that sucked, and it was there on every single part on every single episode. And that was getting kills with sub-weapons. There are 4 sub-weapons in the game, and they're all bottle projectiles. The issue is that throughout the episodes, there are only a few of these you can craft. 2 or 3 sometimes if they were being generous. So you have to try to kill over 4 enemies with each bottle. What makes it worse is that it is often hard to find that many enemies together for some of the episodes. Getting the medals was for sure what took the longest. But once I had the medals for the episode, I had played that episode so many times that the invisible mode was a piece of cake. That was until I had to play episode 4, Barry's section. Look, I don't have any video footage for this, so you're just going to have to trust me. But I swear I played through the game on casual and got 9 out of the 10 medals. I decided to hop onto episode 1 of Claire to quickly clean up a grinded trophy for shooting down 30 afflicted that jumped at you. A few hours later, I came back to finish the medals, and imagine my surprise when I only had 3 out of 10. Not only that, but since I had already played another episode, I could not even press continue to see if maybe I hadn't finished the episode, which I'm confident I did. You see, a major issue with this game is the lack of save files. There is literally only one, the one that you're playing. I got pretty upset over this since it took me around 40 minutes to get those medals, so it was basically a waste of my time. But it's okay, I'll just get them again. I still had to play through that segment on invisible mode either way, so might as well learn it again. I went through the playthrough, doing the same medals I had already gotten, and after that I only had 1 medal left. Again. And I was confident that I could get it on my invisible playthrough. Stealth kill 5 enemies. I played through invisible having already done the clear section earlier since there are quite literally no enemies on that part, and things were going well. I thought this was going to be easy. What I had forgotten was that before the final boss fight, there is a section of the game where you have to fight against waves of enemies. And I died so many times. I had never been so upset in my life. Honestly, it is ridiculous that they make you fight so many enemies before the boss fight. It would be easy if I could just dump all of my resources, but I obviously couldn't, and as much as I wanted to quit, I didn't. Also, the enemies were literally invisible, and since I had played this previously on casual mode for my metal playthroughs, and invisibility is in survivor mode, some enemies spawned that I had no idea existed. The segment is hard enough as it is. We get some of the strongest enemies that can literally one-shot you, and you can't even see them. But thankfully Natalia was there to help me along the way with her X-ray vision. Once I was done with that, it was time to fight against the final boss. I would have liked to have more resources, but it is what it is. I went in there expecting to die at least a few times, but I literally got it on my first attempt. Now I was eagerly waiting to see if I had stealth killed 5 enemies because I was a little bit worried since if I had done them, it would be exactly 5. and I really couldn't see the enemies, so I was not sure if that was what I did. But sure enough, I got the medal, and with that the platinum. Now I finally have 2 ultra rare platinums and 18 total ultra rare trophies. I am so happy and feel super confident on my gaming abilities after doing such a feat. I am going to say this now, do not play this game. If you're a Resident Evil fan, you may like it, but there is a reason why there are so many ultra rares. I do not regret getting this platinum, but it was extremely hard. And after all that suffering, I can confidently say that I had fun. This just felt so much more rewarding than I thought it would.